when God speaks to you and you write it down, that becomes to you scripture, because God has spoken to you, you've written it down, that becomes to you something which is useful to help frame your life, as long as you don't try and put a spin on it and interpret it outside of your relationship with God. So, I mean, my journals, for me, when God is speaking to me, they're scripture to me. I wouldn't expect them to be scripture to anybody else, but they certainly are to me, because they're inspired writings, because that's all scriptures are, graphe, inspired writings. So any inspired writing is useful. Things that I write that I might say to God, they're not inspired. They're just me trying to express myself to him or explain and ask him something, and I record that, but that's not inspired. There's a reference point for what I talk to him about, but the inspiration comes when he speaks to me and I write it down. And I believe every generation, if they're going to serve the purpose of God in their generation and be people after God's own heart, like David was described as, need their own inspired writings for their generation. And I believe that's what God is doing today, inspiring people to share their conversations with God and the things God's looking to reveal. But let's make sure we don't frame it in our own understanding. Otherwise, we will misinterpret what God's saying. And, I bear that because I share my journals every year in sort of the Vision Destiny series. And I'm acutely aware that people can spin what I say. So I make it a point to sort of try and, hey, all of this is based in love. So be careful you don't read what I say or what God said to me and then frame it with your own understanding, because you'll create your own theology. And I'm not interested in a theology. I'm interested in a relationship. For me, it's like, I guess where I'm coming from on that is the inspiration that God will speak to you, and his words to you will be where you are and what you need. And they may be different to how he speaks to me. And that's good, because he knows us individually and he wants to communicate to us in an individual way. Therefore, we don't need to follow anybody else. It is our own journey, and it's an adventure. For me, it's like, this is a huge adventure of discovering new things all the time. Every day there's an opportunity to discover something new, and we're never going to run out of things to discover about God and who he is, because he's infinite. There's just so much more and more and more to discover. And the more I discover, the more I realize there is to discover, but the more it totally confirms the reality of God as love. That's in all of the journey and everything that I've discovered, love is fundamentally at the heart of everything. And I know if it isn't, and if I come across something then I know it's not God, because I totally resonate with that in love. And I'm not talking about wishy-washy love that basically is like, oh, well, I love you, so do whatever you like. I'm talking about love that really has the best, wants the best for his children, wants the best for everybody, wants to bring good out of everything, is really, going to overcome every overwhelming love that will overcome every hindrance or obstacle. Love that's stronger than death and the grave, according to the Song of Solomon. It's that nature of the passion that God has for us and his desire for a relationship. That really is what comes out of this journey. But all of us are on a different route. We all started somewhere differently, and we're all heading to the same place of sonship in relationship with the Father. But we got to go through a lot of different things, because we've got a lot of stuff which is individual and unique to us, and so principles are good, but actually those have got to be outworked individually. And that's the opportunity we all have, because he's made it available for us, for all to have that. So I love the journey analogy because I just think it expresses so much, that there's so much to discover on this journey. And there are many milestones and important, significant events and seasons and things. But ultimately, we're all being drawn towards coming back to that place where we were birthed, in the desire of God's heart, and some of his thoughts about us, which is beyond what I could think about myself. And which is why I can only get that by engaging his heart and his mind. And from there, that is what shapes the reality of what I see and how I feel and who I am. You know, you can't put it outside of the reference point of him. You know, Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. All things were created by him, through him, and for him. He is, as the Logos, he's the plot of history. You know, it's all about him. He's central to it all. You know, and I think once we get hold of that, it really means that God determines the outcome, not us. And we can't do anything to stop God loving us and change the outcome of how he sees us and how he wants to have a relationship with us. Otherwise, if you think of the story of creation and the beginning of creation, the consummation of creation, the purpose of creation, if it all comes down to what we do can thwart what God's desire is, then our sin is stronger than God. And our broken, lost identity is never greater than God's thoughts about us, and his thoughts about us will eventually transform us when we will come into agreement with his thoughts. And for me, that's why Jesus is central to everything. You know, he created everything, and it says he will sum up everything, and God will be all in all. And that to me is the whole journey and why we're on this journey in reality.